Hey people, Shaman Hawk here for Shamanic Lodge. I'm going to answer a question that's been coming up lately. Yes, it is easier now to do interdimensional communications, communicate with spirits, communicate with the dead, communicate with interdimensional consciousness, to make deals, all kinds of things. Why? I have a lot of theories about that. I don't have anything definite. Astrologers, a real astrologer, a good one, might be able to tell you something that's happening. But we also have to remember that we're just whizzing through space a couple 100,000 miles an hour, our solar system. It's a big universe, and we're really tiny and almost insignificant, and often influenced by so many different things. So, communicating with the spirits. Remember that there's a thing called a time constant. Depending on the different types of consciousness that you're working with, whether it's a spirit, meaning that someone that used to be incarnated on Earth and is now deceased, a consciousness, which could be, so many different types of them, it's just unbelievable. But different deities, well, we'd like to think of that as a higher form of consciousness, which could also be angels, demons, and so on. Again, people want some kind of a clear definition so they can categorize what they're feeling. It's like until I interview people for a while, a couple hours, then I might give them, oh, I think you're dealing with this kind of a situation. When I say situation, I mean whatever type of entity, consciousness, spirit that they'd be communicating with. Is it easier now to communicate well enough to be able to make deals? Yes. For some reason at this time, it just seems better than I've seen any time in my life. And when I say well enough, I mean to where you can communicate clear points and make solid agreements. What kind of things would spirits want you to do for their part? Sometimes, get information. It seems to be the most popular way to get information to somebody else. If it's somebody that was like working on something, a project, and they want to see their project, be completed, and they could guide you into communicating with people who could do that. But you also have to tell the spirit, like, you got to give me some information that verifies that I'm actually in communication with you. So you have to give me some details, something special about your project. Sometimes they might want to go ahead and say, well, I need you to give this message to this person. Fine. You need to give me something unique. Pet names, pillow names, something special that you and that person and only you and this person know about. Then they'd say, okay, the other human would say, okay, I guess you really are talking to this person, right? The spirit. Different entities could be working in collaboration with other spirits or other consciousness to benefit humanity and might want you to do something. I've been part of a couple projects like that. But then I have to also explain, like in one particular project back in the early 90s, hey, we have this thing called money, and we needed to pay bills, which gives services like electricity and food and travel and other negotiations for energy. We need to be able to have that to get these services and resources. And right now I'm in this business and it's not doing so good. So if you help me with this, then I'll do that project for you. And then boom, within a day later, and I was a real estate investor back then, and told my wife then, just like this is a deal I made. She's like, cool, and man, it worked, and I finished the project, and that took me on another 10-year journey doing similar projects, and then it went up another level, and that's a longer story. But then I also got even more information off that project that I haven't been able to do yet that would really benefit humanity, but I don't have the location for it because these structures and things like that are really sensitive, high energy uh, instruments. So, but that was an agreement I made, with these, and I would call them entities slash consciousness because they weren't human. They were humanoid but not human form, and never been. But so then you can also get tied up with these other uh, intelligence forms of consciousness that want to experiment and play around. They're like, playing with the animals at the zoo kind of a thing when they come to Earth. And so, and if you get in trouble doing what they're wanting you to do, they're like, oh, no biggie. And it doesn't hurt them any. And they're off to the next human subject to play with. So you have to be real clear about what you're getting into, what they want, what your parts of the agreement are, and how each one of you has these expectations, especially around a timetable. Because I know a lot of people like to say there's no such thing as time, and I use the example: hold their head underwater for a while and watch them run out of it. But you need a timeline, because our life on Earth, especially when it comes to money, has this timeline. Things need to be paid on certain dates, and it has to happen calendrically, or other consequences come up. And so you need to explain that to them. You can use the moon to do that. You can use the clock to do that, but you need something that's stable. The moon's going to be there for a while. The sun's going to be there for a while. We hope, right? And when you can explain it in these terms, then you get more clear understanding of a timeline for them. And these things need to happen at this part of my life so I can pay for my things in my life, and then I'll go ahead and work with you on your project. And so it's a translation in a way from things that we're dealing with that they're not. Or for some consciousness, but if it's a human spirit, that's passed on, then they understand some of these things, although they might not be able to experience it, tangibly experience it. So you have to kind of keep them updated. I hope all that makes sense. So, but in relation to how an astrologer could help, they could tell you during this time you might be more open to underworld aspects. You might be open more to interdimensional aspects. You got such and such happening, with, let's say, your Jupiter and Sun, and this might be a good time for you to be out in the public. And so they could help you get known more, or start a business, or become more popular, or if you're doing things like life coaching, or you want to be seen. Um, Finance, they could say, well, you could cut a deal, but this would be a good time for you. Again, let's say Jupiter, and things going on with your work life or home life, and say, well, you guys help me with my business, and so I can, save a little bit more money, and refinance my house, and then I can help you guys do your project or do these things for you. So this is now is a great time, and people like to say, repeat all these New Age cliches. Well, the veils between the worlds are getting thinner. Okay, that's real linear thought. The veils between the worlds. Get new nouns and adjectives for your New Age cliches. If I was to say what that would be the separations, it would be more of a frequencies. And that's another thing that's misused in the whole New Age scene, but using it like a dial on the old radios, when you're tuning into something, you're using your tuning condenser inside that radio to be able to hone in more exactly on a particular frequency to get what's out of that frequency in that transmission. Well, the same thing, but you are the tuning condenser. To look up tuning condensers in old radios, and you'll see how the vibration and fluctuation in between what's called as the wafers, and that can happen with you, but your perceptions are a lot like the wafers in that tuning condenser. And so when these frequencies come in, they vibrate off of or in between your perceptions. And you have these perceptions in layers or in sequences, just like you do the wafers in those tuning condensers. And so when something's coming in, it's coming in through in between all these things. Well, those wafers in those tuning condensers are the exact same shape. They're in perfect alignment with each other. So when you're in your persona, if you have these perceptions that are in contrast with each other, or this only applies to these conditions and this perception only applies to this thing, is like having wafers in the tuning condenser that are like in odd or abstract irregular shapes. It's really going to be hard for you to get tuned in onto anything in particular. So I'm going to keep my videos kind of short here. So um, in short, in closing, just be real clear in your communications with whatever you're communicating with. Don't always trust what they're giving you as their identifications or their classification of themselves, because that's kind of like asking a person, "Are you a nice guy?" And the person says, "Yeah," and you find out, well, we have a different definition of what nice guy is. So same thing with them, because good, bad, evil, right and wrong, those are all perceptions. And then we look around our environment, social environment, and we find ourselves in a mutual agreement with most of the population in that setting of what these things are: good, bad, right, and wrong. You go on the other side of the planet, you can find yourself in a completely different setting. So same thing, working with these off-planet or interdimensional consciousness entity spirits. They got their own versions on things. You know, it's like humor. Okay. And how long this is going to last, I don't know. So take advantage of it. I mean, this is a great opportunities. I would suggest explaining to them how life has gotten a lot more restrictive and how humans developed a lot better spiritually, socially, when times are good. And say, so help us unblock the freedom, the travel, help us unblock a lot of things that have been very, very confining for us. And you'll probably do us all across the planet a big favor. And you'll probably be able to communicate with people more. And we can work as a larger collective collaboration for the benefit of humanity, the earth, and so on. And keep it simple. Catch you guys later.